Good evening. Welcome to the Wednesday, March 13th meeting of the Chappaqua Central School District Board of Education. The board has been in executive session since 6 o'clock this evening. I'm sorry that we are running late. Can I please have a motion to reopen the public meeting? Oh, it's on. I'll move it closer. Yeah. All in favor? Aye. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so before I get to my report, we have a very special honor. You can't hear me still?
No, we can hear you. We can hear you. Really?
Really? Okay. I mean, up here it's like very clearly on. Is this better?
Testing. Can you hear me? Okay, here. Take mine. All right, I'll take yours. Thank you. That's great. Okay.
Yeah? Better? Okay. Before I give my report, we have a very special honor to bestow. One of our students was awarded the BOCES Student of Distinction Award, which is really exciting and something to be incredibly proud of. So I am going to welcome up Jamie Edelman to start the process of bestowing this award.
Good evening, everybody. This is a very special occasion and a special honor. And I need to start by telling you a little story about Erin Lawrence, the student for whom we are honoring this evening. I received the letter from BOCES indicating that Erin was going to be this year's Student of Distinction. And when I saw the name, it wasn't familiar to me. But when I went and I met Erin, I'm like, oh, it's you, it's Erin. And I said that because one day when I was walking from the Ed Center to the high school, I saw Erin with a friend who was very upset, and he was consoling her and comforting her, and his friendship and the care for this young woman that he was with really had an impact on me. And ever since then, we periodically would see each other in school or on the sidewalk from the Ed Center to here. And he would always say hello to me and give me a very warm greeting. Today, when I was looking for Erin to take a picture of him, I saw a team of his teachers. And when I told them that Erin Lawrence was our student of distinction, they had so many wonderful things to say. They said he's a hard worker, he's the captain of the bowling team, he is a great friend, a kind person, a teammate, and an asset to the Greeley community. So I am so thrilled that tonight we are honoring Erin. I welcome his family, I welcome his teacher and his principal from BOCES, and this time I would like to invite Neil Boyle, the superintendent, to share some words and then to honor Erin. Congratulations, Erin.
Can you hear me? All right, perfect. So just on behalf of the BOCES board, I extend our gratitude for the opportunity to recognize a remarkable student tonight. We're thankful to collaborative efforts of Chappaqua School Board, Dr. Ackerman, and the whole cabinet for the Chappaqua School District. So behind every student, there always exists a dedicated support system. What makes this unique is Erin isn't with us all day. So we also acknowledge the incredible efforts not only of the teachers in CTE, but in the Chappaqua School District. They both instill and carry the same values, which is make sure that we create students pathways to be successful. So thank you not only to our CTE staff who's with us tonight, it's also to the staff that Erin's with here during the day. So we also don't want to leave out Erin's parents. So kids are with us for 35 hours a week. They're with you the rest. So people often forget that we only have a small part of that. So your dedication to Erin's education is invaluable for us as educators. So thank you for that. And then to Erin, it's all you, buddy. It's your efforts. We're just here to support you in that. So thank you for letting us be a part of your journey. Congratulations on being selected as a student of distinction for BOCES. I'd like at this time to introduce his principal, Ms. Pretty Day.
Good evening, Superintendent, Board of Education from Chappaqua, all the members, the president, uh, other administrators, teachers, staff, and the community out here at Chappaqua who is here today to celebrate an outstanding student. So I'd like to call him up here and then read to you what his teachers and what we have been talked about a lot, why he was chosen among all other students. So Aaron, would you join me here? I also have his teacher, Dr. Joseph T. Chico, here, so I'd ask him to join me here as well. So Aaron Lawrence is a senior and currently attending the second year of microcomputer technology program at the Tech Center at BOCES. And I had a little interview with him, so where he told me when he toured the Tech Center in ninth grade, I was surprised that he came as a ninth grader, toured it, and thought about what he wanted to do. He said he came with the idea of attending the culinary program. Then during the tour, he happened to meet with Dr. Dijikov. He's fondly called as Dr. D in the class. And Aaron, after talking to him, was so impressed that he decided this is what is going to change my life. And I'm already interested in gaming, I'm interested in technology in general, and he wanted to learn something more. So since then, Aaron, when he came to Tech Center as 11th grade, he's been here now the second year, he is dedicated to learning and approaches his education with an extremely high level of seriousness. When he's assigned a project, Aaron works diligently on it without interruption until it is completed. He's exceptionally good at his work. During class, Aaron consistently displays a high level of professionalism. He's also the first person to volunteer when there is a help needed. According to Dr. DiCicco, Aaron always impresses him with his positive attitude. He happily rises to any challenge given to him and excels at completing it. Not only Aaron's work is exemplary, but his friendly personality makes him very popular among all his classmates. He's always willing to assist fellow students, helping them learn what he has already mastered. Aaron mentioned to me that one of his favorite video games is Platform Fighters. I had no idea what that was, so I had to look it up. So, and apparently that requires a lot of deal of strategy and preparing before, like to play it. With his knowledge from MCT, he's also working on developing his own games. And besides gaming, he also told me he's into self-care and he started going to the gym and doing weightlifting, which reminds me that I need to do that. He's planning to pursue a degree in computer science and has been accepted at several universities already, and I believe he's trying to make a decision very soon, a big decision deciding his career. Because of his strong work ethic and talent and dedication, we know his future in information technology is going to be a bright one, and therefore he was selected as the student of distinction from Chappaqua School District. Thank you very much and congratulations.
Thank you again for letting us present this award to him. He truly deserves it. I also have a story about Aaron. Last year, well, really September of 2022, when he first entered my class, we started doing programming. And Aaron would always, he'd go for that A and get that program. But there's certain students, and Aaron definitely being one of them, that I would raise the bar slowly on. And I don't know if you knew that or not. But I would say, hey, all right, the graphics are beautiful here. And, we develop games, we build games. I'd say, hey, what about if you do this or if you do that? And he would never refuse. He would never say, hey, Dr. D, that's enough, or anything like that. He'd always go and try his best to do it. And I would always, raise the bar. Towards the end of the year, instead of me going up to him and raising the bar, he would start raising his own bar and say, hey, Dr. D, how do you think I could do this or do that to the program? And that's when you see that, you know that this is a hardworking student, dedicated student. He's going to definitely go far because he's raising his own bar. This year we had to build our lab because the second year students, they completely tear down the lab and they build it. I give them a design spec and they build it. And there were more computers than students because I have the first year students that use the same computers, but the second year students, because they are more experienced, build it. And he built his computer, was finished right away. Dr. D, can we start building these other computers? And right away he gets to it and starts doing more than just one computer. Volunteers himself. I didn't even have to ask. And again, hardworking, dedicated. IT, we need people like him. And I know he's going to be great at it. Whatever he does, he's doing computer science. I know he's interested in security. We need a lot of good people like Aaron in security. So I think this future is going to be bright, and I know his future is going to be bright. So thank you. Thank you. Congratulations.
Aaron, can you come up with your parents and your teachers, and we have something for you, and we'd like to take a picture if that's okay? Come on up. With the board, if the board can get up. We're going to go center stage. Come on up, Aaron. And our guests from BOCES and Aaron's parents, everyone comes up and gets a picture for us. So.
Let me turn to my report now. We were just together last week, so I'm going to be brief as I don't have too much to share, but I do want to update the community on a few things. First, we are getting some positive rumblings from upstate that our foundation aid will be restored, as the Senate has at least introduced the hold harmless aid in their proposed budget. So we are cautiously optimistic, but we don't want to get ahead of ourselves either. But I told you I would keep you updated when we hear things, so that is what we are cautiously hearing. Also, I wanted to update on the literacy audit RFP. We found a firm and we're very excited about to conduct the literacy audit. As you know, we reopened the RFP after the first round of applicants failed to meet our expectations. We had the opportunity to interview the second round of companies who answered the RFP, and as a board unanimously, along with the administration, we're thrilled to bring one of them on board. We don't yet have a contract hammered out, so I don't want to disclose too much, but we hope to be able to by next week. But we really wanted to ensure that the company we hired actually brought skills beyond the expertise that we already have in-house. And also, we felt very strongly that we wanted to hire consultants who view themselves as partnering with our teachers and building leaders. This team of two were both teachers and building leaders, and their approach is to work with our teachers as part of the team, not to dictate to them. And that was really important to us. Many of us have experienced consultants who come in, tell you everything you're doing wrong, make a mess of your desk and leave. And we wanted a team who would work with our teachers. And this team's approach is to make the teachers and the parents in the community partners in evaluating and improving the programs we use for literacy. So we're very excited about that. We'll give you, their name and who they are as soon as we have a contract, and hope to be able to make that announcement next week. With that contract on the agenda, with the goal of conducting this review this spring so that we have the summer to fully prepare for next year. But that is something we wanted to share tonight. We're excited to move forward, and that's all I have tonight. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Ackerman. Do you want to switch back?
I do want to just, no, I'd like to pull up the community update and go to the slide on the eclipse, because there is a resolution on the agenda to adjust the calendar based on our conversation at our last meeting. So I am recommending We dismiss 1 hour early, so we don't have our elementary students on the bus at 3:30 when the eclipse is going to be in full swing. But that will, I know that building's already planning events, which is fine. That's great. But in that case, parents are giving them permission to come back, and we'll have the glasses and we'll help facilitate that. I know the PTA is partnering with us, which is all amazing. And I know some parents are going to take their kids out of school to take, all that is fine. But I do want to just make sure that we don't have students in a position where they're on the bus. Well, this is happening, which is why the 1 hour early dismissal was recommended. So I don't know if you want to act on the resolution right now.
Sure. And the reason we don't want them on the bus is because we then can't control whether elementary school age kids are looking at the sun when they shouldn't be during an eclipse. Like, it is a purely safety situation. So can I have a motion, please, for 1.1.2, which is revising the calendar only to add that hour early dismissal on that Monday for the eclipse? All in favor?
Okay, so I will send something out at some point tomorrow to our parents so they can make the necessary adjustments. And then since we're meeting every week, there's not a lot on the agenda. So this is just a snapshot of what's coming up as we move forward here and head towards the end of March. So we have parent orientations, we have stage band on Thursday, we have talent shows, and then we have another meeting next week. We're going to do some more of our budget work, and of course you can see around the stage we're preparing for the Adams family. So we may have to adjust our location next week and really based on dress rehearsal, but I'm not sure yet. So I'll let you know as we move forward here. And then we have the PTA budget form online on the 25th, so we'll be available to answer questions. So now we're going to move into our budget presentations this evening. So we're going to do different pockets and then stop for board questions, and then we're going to move forward. So Adam's going to begin. So while Adam's presenting, I think it's Andrew Taylor here. So we'll move back, and then we're going to be shifting people around because we have multiple people involved in presenting these different components of the budget. Josh will stay up here with us, and you guys will move back. And Andrew, if you could join us up on stage, that would be great. And Adam's going to begin.
All right, so thank you, Dr. Ackerman. This is the 2024-25 curriculum and instruction budget that we're going to go through, and I tried to weave in some of the board's questions that they had as well as part of the presentation, so we'll cover those as well. Let me start with guiding principles, and some of this is laying some groundwork for the presentations that follow as well. We all develop our budget around several guiding principles. Most of these, if not all of these, will look familiar to you. One thing that we ground this work in is the strategic questions from the Board of Education. I know you're very familiar with those, so I won't read them to you, but I just wanted to note that we do ground our budget decisions in those strategic questions. We also have this revised strategic plan with strategic priorities, so we take those into consideration as we develop what we will spend budgeted money on next year to make sure that we can move things forward with regard to those 5 strategic priorities. Then we've got some things that are more closely linked to curriculum and instruction. I underlined some of the key words there. We want active student learning, where students are engaged in meaningful inquiry, imagination, invention, interaction, hypothesizing, and reflection. And you see strong student collaboration, where students will work cooperatively to create a product, arrive at a solution, etc. So you've heard so much and even seen building presentations where we value that kind of student engagement through the process. So 2 C&I department goals, and these have kind of stood the test of time for us. The first one is to support powerful, innovative teaching and leading through inspired professional learning, and develop each student through rigorous instruction, powerful, relevant, and culturally responsive curriculum. Right, now, this was our previous strategic plan, and the reason I bring it up is because the board had asked that I prepare a few slides on instructional spaces and kind of updates to that, the usage, and also the costs associated with some of those newer instructional spaces. So I just wanted to remind the community that one of our 5, and then it turned into 6 priorities for the previous strategic plan. The first one was using instructional space.
I don't think they can hear you.
Oh, I was doing great too. How about that? Is that? Well, it feels like I'm yelling from up here, but maybe from out there.
Okay, you better.
Okay, I'm gonna. Sorry for the group on the stage. I think it feels really loud up here.
We don't.
Okay, so let me try to project a little bit better, and I apologize, it's a little loud up here, but let me go through as best I can. So this is just a reminder of our previous strategic plan, which we actually had just revised. The first of the district priorities was using instructional space to amplify learning. That was a result of really a capital project bond, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about in just a minute. So the district has recognized from quite some time ago, I think it was 2014 when the iLab was built, that change in education is notoriously slow. When you change space, you can often leverage that change in space to support a change in instruction. And so the district's been using that as part of the philosophy to modernize instruction. We've been modernizing spaces across the district, and I just shared the historical context. The instructional philosophy I also shared, which is this idea of if you want students engaged in their learning and actively collaborating, then you need to have spaces that support that. Traditional classroom spaces don't support that as well as some of our more modern spaces. And we've also visited quite a few colleges and universities and worked with designers and architects of those colleges and universities to try to model our spaces after many of the college and university spaces, which our students will move off to after Greeley, and even some workplaces as well. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the use and cost of some of our new spaces. The first thing is the way we track usage in spaces, and we do it a variety of ways. One way we do it is just basically what courses are assigned there. So, for example, in the STEAM lab or the STEAM building up here at Greeley, we have fashion, we have design, we have technology classes. Are all scheduled right into that space, so we know which students are using it because their classes are scheduled in there. That also happens in Upper L. And we have other spaces where students are not assigned in, like the greenhouse at Greeley, the SRC. It's more of a drop-in space, so those tend to be a little bit harder. In some spaces, we have technology that actually counts students. Most people haven't noticed, but when you walk into the high school library, if you look to your right and you look to your left, you trip a little sensor every time you walk in. So they actually have student counts as they move in. Some of the spaces don't have those counts, but some of them do. And then the other thing that we think about is like club use. I know the Science Olympiad, for example, like really uses the STEAM lab after school. So some of those we kind of count into that factor as well. And then in some cases we can track usage through like supplies, for example. How often we're buying things that are replenished within those spaces, like number of bags of soil in the SRC, and you can see us kind of churning through those supplies in those spaces. And then in terms of the cost of some of those spaces, we have the construction costs, which we could certainly provide if you're interested, but we don't have like meters on individual spaces within buildings. We don't have a way to monitor like what kind of costs are associated with the running of the STEAM building at Greeley, for example. There's not a way to separate that out. But I will tell you, with new construction, in some cases, the new construction is much more efficient, so it saves money with change in lighting, change in insulation, things like that. In other cases, with a new space, we might install air conditioning, and that drives up the cost. Some of the spaces were old computer labs, which actually took a lot of energy to run, and now they've turned into maker spaces, which take less, especially with LED lighting and things like that. So we don't really have numbers specifically by space. We don't have it broken out that way, but we do have some rough ideas of which spaces actually saved us money and which ones have cost us a little bit more. So let me go through some of the actual spaces here. The Greeley GLC is the space with the counter on the way in. This is a space that is really well used. This was part of the 2019 construction, the capital project, or I'm sorry, 2016 capital project bond at Greeley. And this space is really well used, if not overused, during the school day. The Greeley STEAM building, I did a rough count. We have 290 students scheduled into STEAM. We've got 3 teachers. Mr. DeBellis is here. Mr. Arnold, Ms. McDonough used that space for courses that are scheduled in there. It is not used 100% of the time, but it is pretty well used just with the students that we have scheduled in there, 290 students. I didn't do the analysis. Some of those are semester courses. We could like do a weighted average and that kind of thing if you were interested, but it is a space because courses are scheduled into it that is used pretty often, or very often, I would say. really upper L, we have most of our 9th and 10th grade humanities classes in there, very heavy with English, social studies, and also world languages, so that we could get specific usage. But that is a space that all 9th and 10th graders have experiences in that L space, usually for English and social studies as well as language. And then there are also some upper level electives in English and core classes in social studies scheduled into upper L. Now, the Greeley SRC is one that we've had some conversations about. This is a space. It's interesting because we've visited quite a few university greenhouses, and plant science tends to be like long-term science. It's not something where you'd like plant tomatoes and then watch them grow. So you wouldn't anticipate, you check on them and you'd maintain them, but it's not a space that in some cases you walk by and there's no students in it. And so you think like, well, why did we build this space if there were no students in it? But plant science is really something that, even when we went up to Cornell and we saw they have, just tremendous number of greenhouses, the number of people that are working actively in them at any given time is fairly low. But we have been working pretty hard to get our life science classes in there, used by students from, 9th grade all the way up through 12th grade. The SRC. In some cases, we've also used, like, we put down some requirements, like we'd like every student in a particular course to use the facility a couple of times. We've thrown out numbers and things like that. We have some other spaces that, like the middle school podcasting space, which have been supported by our friends at the CSF. This is used to help produce broadcasts, podcasts, morning announcements, things like that. I think you will likely soon see a grant for a Bell podcasting studio to be similar. Middle school hydroponics. We've added 2 middle school hydroponic spaces and a graphland hydroponic space thanks to the CSF. And the middle school spaces have been integrated into our family and consumer science course, as well as some other courses, but mostly family and consumer science there. And all students take that course, and so they all have experiences in these middle school spaces. Then here you have middle school STEAM. Originally, we're still tracking usage for middle school STEAM. We have a spreadsheet. Originally, we had minimums by grade. We wanted every student in every grade to have one experience in the fall and one experience in the spring when we first opened those spaces, just to encourage their use. We've since, based on the uptick in usage, we've pulled those kind of requirements back out, and we have teachers in those spaces now that track the usage of those spaces. Then the elementary schools, we redesigned the global learning centers. These are the formerly known as elementary libraries. They have all been renovated. All students in the elementary schools have library as one of their kind of special core classes. And then the elementary maker spaces, we still have a requirement that all students or all teachers have 2 experiences in there. All students have an experience in the fall and an experience in the spring, K through 4. Many of them have more than just those 2 experiences. But we wanted to make sure that all students get to utilize that space. All right, and then I did also want to mention that we have partners to help us with some of the expenditures here. The PTA programs, you can see so much support comes from our PTA, author visits, cultural arts assembly programs, grade level science programming. You can see some examples there. Field trips they help us fund. You can see a list there. This is just I felt like I wanted to highlight some of the pieces, but this is not an exhaustive list, but it does help us offset our budget. And then we have CSF programming there on the right side. We have some grants that come out of the Innovation Committee. We also have some traditional grants. I put a sampling of those. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars of support that come in through donations through the PTA and the CSF. And then this next slide is just a sampling of the Insta grants. And I know the board knows this because we periodically will be approving these grants. They're on the agenda, and I have slides to share there. So that's some of the kind of background before we get into the budget specifically. So I do want to share my budget numbers and just speak to a couple of things, and then share like what do you get for this, these expenditures. The first slide, you can see the proposed budget. And overall, my budget is up just a little bit. You can see some variance here. One of them is the contractual is up by about 23,000. We're getting actually more information like every day about like our expenditures with regard to the RFP for literacy, for example. But I did want to make sure that we had enough money in the contractual line. Contractual is not contracts for employees, but instead contracts that we have with outside vendors in this case. And so the board actually approves those. So all the contracts that you approve, at board meetings come out of either this line or the contractual line on the next slide. I also have an increase in the BOCES line of 25,000. BOCES helps provide all kinds of things. They have curriculum support, professional development networking, collegial circles for our librarians, art teachers, math coaches, Science 21 training, things like that. So that line has gone up a little bit as well for next year's budget. All right, and then this is my the second part of my budget. You can see here, this one I reduced the textbook line just by a touch. We've been able to secure some multi-year contracts for some of the curriculum materials that we use, and so we've been able to like stabilize the cost a little bit. And I have worked in some extra money there in that textbook line, despite the drop, for waiting for the recommendations for the literacy RFP. So I do have some room there. Depending on those recommendations. And then here you see the overall, you can see the variance from year to year, what we had this year, expect to spend this year, and the overall variance in summary. All right, so some of these things, we just got some communication with one of the RFP vendor that Hillary had just mentioned, and so we actually have more information than we did just a few hours ago with regard to some of these things. But this is information that's coming in. So anticipated unknowns, cost to conduct the literacy RFP. I think we'll have a contract by the next board meeting next week, so we should be in a much better place there. PD associated with those recommendations. Literacy programmatic and material costs if we make shifts, and other subject area curricular costs they may recommend that we look at. For example, and I had mentioned at another board meeting, our science curriculum, for example. I'm interested in hearing what they think of how our science programming grades 3 and 4 support our literacy program when it comes to like vocabulary building, for example, and I anticipate that they may recommend some shifts there, but I've tried to work that into my budget. And then there's other things like keynotes and consultants and programming, outside programming that we don't always anticipate, and so have space in my budget for those things. And AI programming, the world of AI is shifting so fast right now. Some of the AI services are subscription based, and so I wanted to make sure I had a little bit of room by AI, artificial intelligence, to be able to subscribe to some of that technology to the extent that it emerges and we feel like we need it for next year. All right, so those I kind of led with some of the numbers. These are some of the highlights with regard to what that budget supports. You can see some curriculum and instruction highlights. I'm not going to read through the whole thing. Many of these programs we've shared with the board previously. We have professional learning experiences. I've made a list for you here. Again, this is just a sampling. It's worth noting that when I ask some of our teachers that are potentially, teachers that are applying for jobs and considering working here for us, one of the things when we say why Chappaqua, one of the things that we hear often is the professional learning experiences that they have heard about, or even in some cases participated in. Sometimes we'll open up our professional development experiences to teachers in the region. And so this not only pays dividends with making sure our teachers and leaders have the support they need with regard to their own development, and that they stay here when they are here, but also attracting, talent from outside as well. And then this is a list of a sampling of some of our in-service courses. In-service courses are really offered mostly by teachers for teachers after school. And so this is a list of in-service classes from 2023, 2024. Authors and speakers. I know the board has joined us for many of these experiences. In some cases, it's administrative professional development. Other cases, working with students. In some cases, teacher keynotes. These are some of the authors that we've had. My budget lines support this. These keynotes, some of our anchor texts for professional learning for different cohorts that are on different learning teams and in-service classes. And then the last thing is event planning, conference days, unity days, PTA, partnerships through programming, cultural enrichment with the PTA, et cetera. You can see down the list when it comes to these events that we support through CNI. So this is the overall summary of the budget. This is just a repeat of the previous slide, and that wraps up my section. So if you have any questions, I can take those before we transition over to technology.
I have one question that's probably a really minor question, but there was a line on the numbers slide about gifted education, and it said for each year it had a $3,000 proposed budget and then an actual budget of 0. And I guess my question is, why does it keep going in? Because I don't think we have a gifted program.
Yeah, that's a good question. So sometimes we have a student that has, or students that have a very unique need, or a teacher would need some kind of unique program, unique instructional experience, resource for a student to enrich their experience within the classroom. We don't have a separate gifted and talented program, but I have used that line. I haven't used it in the last few years, but I have used that line when we have a student that has some, unique thing that we feel like we need to enrich, whether that's through some kind of computer program or through some kind of outside resource that we can bring in. Perhaps they're coming from another school and engaged in a program where they need like a next level of curriculum that we don't offer in that grade, and so we've used it for that in the past. So I've rolled it over because it's hard to anticipate when that student comes, and but yeah, typically we don't spend it, and when we don't spend it, it ends up going back into the larger budget and into the general fund and rolls over.
Can you explain the BOCES program for people who might not know what that is? And I know we met Aaron tonight, who's part of that program, but I don't know if all the parents know what that is.
Yeah, so there's many things that we access BOCES for. One part, like one branch of BOCES is student programming. So BOCES is basically a consortium of school districts. There's 18 component districts in our BOCES. And it basically consolidates costs and helps us like kind of purchase things in large groups and have some purchasing power there. But educationally, they also have some specialized programs with some specialized tools that we don't necessarily have within all these districts. And in some cases, because they draw a handful of students from every district, they can offer a program that we might not be able to run because we don't have the volume of students interested in that particular thing. So they offer a wide variety of technical programs, but they also have some more advanced programs. They have some like pre-health profession programs, things like that. So there's, they have a whole like trades and technical side, but then they also have a kind of an academic side. So that's the student side for high school students to be able to access. They also have some special education programming that, Jamie could speak to if you'd like to hear more about it, but they have some, specific programs for students that have, very, very specific needs that maybe a school district wouldn't have enough students to have a program within house, but they have within the region when, districts send students there, they have enough students. And then they have a whole separate kind of branch of BOCES around professional learning, professional supports, professional services. And so the budget numbers that you saw here tonight for curriculum and instruction are those numbers, the ones where we provide, we send teachers for professional development, access collegial circles where they have a group of professionals that they bring in, educators that they bring in. I'm part of a curriculum council, for example, where all the assistant soups and directors of curriculum all go once a month to learn together and share ideas and things like that. So they, that money supports that through BOCES.
I have one question, Adam. Relative to the programmatic costs, particularly as it pertains to literacy, given the fact that we are hopeful that the RFP sort of gets kicked off when it gets kicked off, we obviously have to make a lot of curricular decisions, purchase decisions before that. So how are you sort of navigating?
Yeah, so we have some options when it comes to some of our curricular programs that give us a little bit of flexibility. And so, for example, our social studies program is TCI K through 8th. If you get a 5-year subscription, it costs much more, but it's much less expensive than doing a 1-year, for 5 years. And so what we would do, what I've done in this case is, depending on what the literacy shifts are, we could use that money to purchase like the 5-year of the next thing, like social studies, for example. If literacy comes in and says we don't need to make major shifts in literacy, I'm just saying that hypothetically, then I wouldn't spend that on literacy. And instead we can spend it on some other things. We could beef up some of our classroom library materials, which would be an expenditure down the road anyway. We could do like a 5-year contract with TCI and pay more upfront, which would save us money in the long run. On the other hand, we could also do the 1-year contract with TCI and use that money to put into the literacy program.
So it's sort of baked in as a monetary line item at the moment, and your discretion sort of how to spend it.
Yeah. And I think we positioned ourselves well based on the subscriptions that we have, that I have a chunk of that money of the 400 plus or minus thousand that we could apply to literacy if we need to.
So on the summary budget slide, I'm not sure if this is a Josh or an Adam question, but I'm curious about what's our methodology for trying to estimate the total regular school other line, since it seems like it's bounced around. Like we haven't been great. Like what we've approved has not been what we've spent each of the last 2 years. And so this year we're saying, well, we can come down a little bit from where we were last year. I'm just curious how we're trying to get better at estimating that line.
Yeah, so I think Adam talked about how lots of things happens over the course of a year where we try and be planful as we can over the year, and then sometimes there are curricular expenses that we can't expense or plan for. We definitely, Adam and I, need to discuss and plan out, and as we do with our principals, everything. But there are just times where things happen over the course of the year. A literacy RFP, is one example. That money bounces around between those lines. It doesn't mean that the money isn't being allocated for the items that they were originally budgeted for. There are also times where there are specific lines that we can purchase things out of. So, for instance, Adam might find a BOCES service that might provide the same thing that we would provide in-house. And with BOCES service, we generally get aid on it. So that money might get transferred into there. So over the course of the year, we're just shifting things around a little bit, but not different from the intended outcome. It's just where it's purchased out of.
Yeah, I would just add to that. Things come up. That our conversations around the Middle East, for example, we had that wasn't even on the in the conversation about the budget. We decided to hire. We did quite a bit of professional development through some contracts, and we also had we spent almost $20,000 in curriculum review at this point of Middle East curriculum, which we all agreed was necessary and important to do. But we have obviously that comes with a cost to it, and so we try to have there is some flexibility within that budget line, so we can pay for those things. And then in some cases, just like someone might do on a home budget, we have some costs that we know we can spread out over a few years, and they end up being kind of the cushion places, like refreshing classroom libraries. It's nice to be able to do that on a regular basis, but sometimes there are some years where we put very little into that, and then other years where we say, okay, we've got a little bit of extra money we can put in towards that, make that investment this year or even at the end of a school year, so then you can save some money the next year. So there's a little bit of that as well.
Okay, and thank you, Adam. Andrew, now we're going to do the technology budget.
So thank you all for having me here today. Thank you all for having me here today. I'm really happy to be presenting my first budget to the board, and I'm going to start off by telling you a little bit about our goals. When I onboarded this year, I looked at what the technology department was doing, came up with 5 goals for the department. 1, to strengthen the infrastructure, to harden the data privacy and security, to ensure business continuity, to support instructional initiatives, and to develop a framework for a budget that was responsible. Goal number 1, strengthening the infrastructure. This really started with the bond project over the course of this year, where we replaced every bit of fiber and copper within the district. We also replaced all the switches and routers and access points and the UPSs in the district. It's a pretty major project, miles of cabling being put into the district. And the goal was to make the network faster, make it more reliable, make it more secure, and to really work on how we control and configure the network so that to maximize its use. Little update on that project. The wiring and access points are almost done in all the buildings. By the middle of April, they should be done in all the buildings. The closets, we've done the wiring in the closets and switches in 2 of the buildings, and those should be completed by the end of the year. The controls and configurations and the power supply should be done by the end of the summer. The building project, the bond project rather, was really to improve our LAN within our school district. That is the network inside of each of the buildings. What we're going to look at next is how we improve the WAN, which is the connection between the buildings and our connection to the world. The reasoning for doing this is really behind goal number 2, which is harden our data and security privacy. When I look at data and security, I look at 3 different buckets. 1, our technical controls, our administrative controls, and our physical controls. Technical controls meaning our hardware and software that protects the district. Our administrative controls meaning the people and the policies and the processes. And our physical controls, who has access to what within inside the district. We do a great job with technical controls and physical controls. Where I think we could work a little bit harder on is our administrative controls, and that's what we've been working on this year. When you look at statistically the cyber attacks inside of any organizations, most of those occur because someone inside the organization shares something inappropriate with a bad actor outside the organizations. That data doesn't change inside school districts either. Gow Institute did a study in 2020 that said that students and staff were the primary reason for most security breaches inside the schools. So to combat that, we've done a couple of things this year. One, we're looking at an encryption software that we're rolling out right now to encrypt our files at rest and our email transitions. We've did a password reset where we've looked at the complexity strength of our passwords. We've implemented multi-factor authentication, and that project should be complete with all the staff in the next month. And in the spring, we're actually launching InfoSec IQ, which is a data privacy and security training software that also does simulated phishing for the staff. Goal number 3, business continuity. I think as a tech director, this is one of my primary responsibilities and things I work a lot on. To summarize what business continuity means, it means we need to look at what are our risks inside of our organizations and how do we mitigate those risks? How do we make them smaller, and or how do we react after something may happen inside of our organization? When, as a tech department, we looked at our business continuity and the risks that we had, and we looked at 3 different areas that we feel like we really needed to focus on. One is our internet access, our server management, and our phone system. Internet access. Currently, we have a single internet connection to the world, to the network. That comes into one building. We wanted to make that a redundant internet access so that we have multiple accesses into the district from multiple buildings to reduce the chances that the building or district will go down in the case of an event. Those internet access are also going from different directions, one from north, one from south, to again, make that network even stronger. We looked at a variety of vendors for this, and we actually ended up choosing the Lyric WAN services. Lyric has a great service where they actually provide redundant internet access, dual firewalls for the district. They have DDoS protection, but more importantly, they have a whole service around this, where if we have an issue, they have a team that will come in and help us troubleshoot those issues within our WAN or within our internet access. Goal number 2 here is our server management. We did an inventory of all of our servers and found we have about 34 servers on site and 2 file management servers. When we looked at those, we found that there was about 8 to 10 that we could decommission. So we're in the process of decommissioning those and archiving the data on them. There's a few that we want to host in an industry-hosted platform, and the rest of them we want to move to a cloud-based platform or a hybrid local and cloud-based platform to, again, provide the best continuity service. We, again, looked at Azure and Amazon and a few different vendors out there. And the Lyric services actually went out again, primarily because one of the big benefits of Lyric services is all of that data flows over the WAN that we have direct connection to the Lyric services. So it never actually goes out on the internet, making the data transfer much more secure. It also has dual data centers. They have a center in Putnam County and a center in Rockland, in Westchester. So if one of their data centers goes down, we instantly fall over to the other data center. And again, they have a service around it that has 24/7, 365 access to a team of people if we have a data breach. The communication systems and phone systems inside the districts. Currently, we have an on-premise phone system. The alternative to that would be a hosted or cloud-based VoIP system. The best in class is actually to have a hybrid system where you have both an on-premise and a cloud-based service. What that allows for is that if one fails over, you can always go to the other. It gives you redundancy in our call systems so that we can always have a system up and running in the phone system. Having a hybrid system also allows us to go to what's called unified communications. So we can connect those systems into other devices, phone systems, cell phone applications, and even our emergency systems. Again, Lyric has a great VoIP service. We did look at other services, but their VoIP service went out. They have a hybrid service, so it lives on both their cloud and on our premises. They use Cisco, which is industry standard, and they have, again, another whole team that's there to support us. In these services, Lyric has about 48 districts that use their managed services, and they have 450 servers that they host. So this is not a new service for them. They've been doing it for a while. Currently, our network configuration looks like this. We have an internet connection to our district through a firewall that goes into the high school, where our hosts our servers and our VoIP phone system, which is backed up. The new configuration that we're recommending through this plan is actually to have a much more redundant system where we have 2 connections coming into both 7 Bridges and the high school, a VoIP system in the cloud and on premises, redundant servers, redundant internet access. Again, it's just a much more robust system, which builds our continuity of services, business continuity. Instructional initiatives. We've been working on several instructional initiatives. I won't read through all of these, but computer-based testing we launched this year, 3 through 8. It was our first time we did the pilot in January. We rolled out iPads for 5th and 6th grade, and we actually are continuing to expand the ViewSonic rollout. The device refresh, we're staying with the same device refresh that the district's been on. Again, next year we're replenishing kindergarten and going to 7, 8 devices, where we did 5th, 6th iPads this year. We're looking to do 7, 8 MacBook Airs for next year. I'm always impressed when I walk around the district and I see what's happening with technology in the classroom. There's lots of great technology work happening that I'm always happy to see, especially in the area of STEAM. And we're expanding some of that work inside of STEAM next year. We've launched an Infento Kit program at the middle school this year, which is actually an EV trike go-kart. You can either use pedals, and so they learn about electric vehicles at a very simple vehicle level. We're working with the foundation to come up with a solar-powered car, an EV car, a full 4-passenger car that the students will build from the ground up. And we've actually revamped the AP computer science course in the high school to make it a robotics-based computer science course. Our lease this year is it's going to be focused mostly on expanding the ViewSonic rollouts, the 7th, 8th grade devices, and a few other devices for replacing clerical support staff with the Mac computers as well. So to get right to our budget, if you look at our overall budget, the district budget, you'll see that there's a little bit of a decrease of 6.34%. That's because we're shifting some resources around out of the district budget into some BOCES lines. So you'll see some increases in the BOCES lines on the next slide. So the big thing to see here is the number that's coming out of contractual services, which you'll see some funds going into the BOCES service on this slide. So overall, we have a 1% increase in the technology budget for this year. But that's really not the whole story, because when you look at some of the programs that we've worked on this year, one of the things that Josh and I have spent a lot of time working on is getting a P&W contract for our Acture services. It's about a $1.2 million contract, of which now will be aided, so that we'll be able to get anywhere between 35 and 60% aid, depending on what lines those contracts go into. Every BOCES COSER line has a different aid ratio based on the type of service that it's providing. We've also moved some services through the WAN services and the server hosted I talked about earlier, which we're expecting to do next year, which will again increase some of the BOCES costs and BOCES services. But the big benefit of doing these shifts is actually we're having a much larger return on expenditure aid. So in the following year, we're going to be getting around, where last year we got around $125,000 in the technology budget. We'll be getting around $750,000, which we're hoping to use some of that to do the phone system in the following year, and also leverage that to do the E-rate project. We have about $450,000 in E-rate funding that we have to use in the next couple of years, or that expires. So we'll be able to build an E-rate project with some of those funds. So in the following year, it'll look our aid will go up even more, because now we've added the phone services, and we'll also be getting a refund of the E-rate costs of around $450,000. So even though it looks like a 1% increase this year, when you add the additional aid, it's actually a 19% savings for the district. And it's going to be up to a 32% savings, which will be a long-term savings we'll see every year after that. The BOCES aid is not the only aid that we receive. We also get some other estimated budget offsets through device buybacks and some recycling programs that we do in the technology department as well. Any questions?
Thank you, Andrew.
I have a device question. So next year, we're going to give each 7th and 8th grader the Mac Airbook. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then they give that back And then when they get to the high school, they bring their own device from home. If they need a device, then we provide one.
Yeah, we always have devices that students can use inside the high school, which would be a Mac Air as well when they get to the high school. We are considering some other plans, which are just sort of preliminary right now, but the potential of having eighth graders be able to purchase their devices for high school if they wanted to purchase them and keep them long term.
And do we ask seventh or eighth grade parents to use their own device, or we're telling them that we're providing a device
We
for everyone?
provide the device in seventh and eighth grade.
The seventh and eighth graders have a higher likelihood of making a mistake with their own devices, but if they're on our devices, we're able to help coach them in a different way, which is one of the reasons why we like them all to have district issued computers. And also, parents often would like them to use our devices before they buy them their own. So they're used to being responsible in a certain way with something they haven't paid for. So those are two big factors in that decision making process. We talked about that at length about 5 years ago.
What is the lease duration on those? Is it a 2-year, 3-year? Well, like what is the life cycle generally?
It's a 4-year lease, which is
Okay.
actually built into our replenishment plan as well.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Andrew. We appreciate
you.
it. Thank you. And so now we're going to move over to the pupil personnel services presentation. So we're going to invite up Karen, who's going to join Jamie, and they're going to co-present together.
Good evening. Let me begin by introducing Karen Smith. Karen is the Director of Special Education and 504 Services. She and I are really happy to be here tonight because we're so proud of the work that's happening within our department and excited about our plans for next year. To start, we always like to reiterate our commitment to an inclusive educational approach. We are truly committed to ensuring that all of our students can thrive in an environment that is least restrictive. We take our responsibility to place students in such settings very seriously.
So our preparation for the presentation this evening really started with us doing a bit of a look back. And what we wanted to do was take a look at the priorities that we had in place for this year. And we're pleased to report that for the most part, we have addressed all of those needs in some way. So we took a look at the resource room that switched over to Learning Center at the high school, and response and feedback has been good. The kids continue to work primarily on executive function skills in that setting. We've really focused a lot on the integrated co-teaching, which is a shift from last year to this year. We had a consultant teacher model at the middle school, and now we're using the integrated co-teaching. And teachers and students are reporting some really positive feedback about the increased time together and the increased ability to work on curriculum together. We are really developing our social skills training for our kids, particularly at the elementary school level. Our psychologists are spearheading that, and next year our speech and language pathologists are also going to join in that work. And we always support all of the work that we're doing with our kids with professional development for our staff to ensure that our staff are comfortable and competent in the work that we need to do with our kids. We did do the update with the website. That was primarily a lift with Adam Schomart, but we continue to accept feedback on that because we want to continue to make it very user and parent friendly so people can really access the documents and information that they need. And Jamie and I are really involved in the MTSS process. It's partially because it leads into special education, but it's partially because it leads back into the classroom. So we've really focused on our relationship with building level supports and how that works collaboratively with students in special education. This is just a bit of a highlight of some of the accomplishments and work that we've done this year. As I said, not only have we done the integrated co-teaching at the middle school, we had tremendous professional development. It started over the summer, and then it continued with coaching in the classroom with GNR Inclusive in both of the middle schools. And again, the feedback from both general and special educators has been very positive about the work that they're doing and the information they're receiving. We continue to support our students with autism. We're doing a lot of social skills training at the elementary, but we've also, Jamie has really partnered with the Special Education PTA. They run a parent group in the evenings as well. And we're doing ongoing training with our staff as well as with our teaching assistants to really support our kids with autism. Again, the MTSS. And we also, I did want to mention the DBT, the dialectical behavioral therapy. We are training all of our clinical staff, which includes our school counselors, our social workers, and our psychologists. And that's to support our students in K through 12 with social emotional regulation.
The next series of slides are going to offer some insights into students with IEPs in our district. Some slides will offer us a historical perspective and will tell us what we anticipate, what the situation has been in our district for the past 3 years. And the reason why this is so important is it enables us to identify needs and to gain a historical perspective. The data is essential to us predicting student needs and to informing our budgetary decisions.
So when you take a look at this slide, you can see that our classification rate, our students with an IEP, has gone up slightly. It was 9.9%. It's gone up to 11.08% over a 2-year period. But if you look at it, it's really commensurate with the increases that have occurred across New York State. Right now, New York State is operating at about a 19% average classification rate. And when I look at our classification rate, to me, it's a testimony to what we're doing in the general education classroom. It's what our teachers are doing with our kids. And it's also part of the MTSS process. I think it speaks to a success with the MTSS because we have the rate which increases, but it has not increased dramatically. This is where we break down the educational disabilities by classification category. New York State gives us 13 classification categories. And if you look at the slide, you can see our classification went up slightly from 369 last year to 393 this year. We use the data from the New York State website, which is called BedStay data. It's the first Wednesday in October. So that's where the snapshot is. It's an evolving number. It changes throughout the year as kids become classified or declassified. The things that we look at in terms of the trend, I noticed that the students with learning disabilities has increased. And again, I think that we're more accurately pinpointing kids with a learning disability as part of the MTSS process. We have more standardized assessments. We know that kids have been exposed to more research-based interventions, so we can more assuredly know that our kids may have a learning disability. As well, the other notable increase is in other health impairment. Other health impairment is a broad category, but when I look at the trend, I would imagine that it's related to mental health, it's related to anxiety, and it's related to ADHD. I think those are the most predominant medical diagnoses that tend to rise to the level of needing an IEP and come under that category of other health impairment. The students with autism are going up slightly. And we see that trend across all of our buildings. And it's the reason why we continue to work on professional development for our staff and programming for our students.
This slide is also data that was captured on BedStay and shows the number of students, Chappaqua students who have IEPs. 365 of those students are receiving their program in our schools. 25 of those students are getting their program at a school other than a Chappaqua school, and we have 3 students that are receiving homebound instruction. So we have a total of 393 students with IEPs in our school district. On this slide, we are sharing with you the initial referrals this school year. In this slide, it's from last February when we last presented to this February, the number of initial CSE referrals we've had by building. And notably, there has been a decrease in the number of referrals made to the Committee on Special Education. So naturally, we were thinking, why might this be the case? And we attribute this decline to the work that has been done to strengthen our multi-tiered system of support, MTSS, which was mentioned in some previous slides. So what's happening is through MTSS, students are being identified earlier and are receiving interventions in their classroom or in their school building, and they seem to be the appropriate level of intervention. So, in essence, by offering this earlier, we are seeing fewer students rise to the level of a referral and require fewer students that need the level of support that is provided by special education services.
This slide is just another data point for all of us. I usually take a look at the number of kids who move into the district, moved into the community with an IEP, and it's changed over the years. The number has gone down quite a bit from 2 years ago. And then we also take a look at the number of kids who've moved out of the district who also have an IEP. And then the bottom number is the number of students who moved into the district but immediately require an out-of-district placement. They've already been placed in a day or residential placement, and we're just maintaining that placement that was made by another district. So those numbers are just part of our cohort and our population. It's just, as we plan for kids and we plan for programs and the number of cohorts and staffing that we need, we just take a look at that as another data point. This slide to me is interesting, really interesting. It shows a significant increase in the number of kids in preschool, CPSE, who are receiving services. And I put out a note to everyone who works in the CPSE realm, and I said, what do you think this is based on? And the two factors people talked about were lingering effects of the pandemic. And then secondarily, they felt that early intervention and teachers noting when kids might need services and provide them earlier has also driven the number up a little bit. Early intervention is really a strong model that continues into CPSE. And one of the things that we see is kids who receive those services early often are able to be declassified when they enter into kindergarten because they no longer require that intensive level of support. So we're big proponents of kids getting services through early intervention and preschool. And our staff works really hard to help families find providers, which can be really challenging. But we spend a lot of time networking with preschool providers so that we can make sure our families get the services that their children are entitled to as quickly as possible.
So as we were thinking about next year and crafting this budget, we reviewed the data that we just shared with you. And as we said, we seem to be referring fewer students, but classifying more. So we wonder, well, so why might that be? And again, we come back to the strength of our MTSS is that we are getting better at identifying students who genuinely need special education services, and we are able to provide support for those who may not need special education services but need other interventions. We're able to provide those earlier at the building or classroom level. We are also seeing an increase and concerned about the increase in students being classified as other health impaired. We believe that to be because of the increase in mental health issues, ADHD, and anxiety that is part of a national trend. But we recognize that those numbers are rising, and we're excited that our DBT initiative, the training that we've been doing in that area, will help to support that increase in students and all of those students in our buildings who are experiencing those kinds of learning challenges. And lastly, we're not entirely sure why more students are being referred at the preschool level, but we know that they are, and we know that once they leave preschool, they're coming to us. We believe it to be that our preschools are seeing something that's going on with students that their schools aren't equipped to manage or to provide the interventions for, so they're making a referral to us. We also think that it might be some residual effect of the pandemic. Either way, they're coming to us, and like all kids, we need to meet their needs once they get here. So after we reviewed all of that data and really tried to analyze it, we were thinking about and setting our priorities for the upcoming school year. And we see that there is a huge benefit of having a strong multi-tiered system of support, that's something that our students need, and it provides them support as soon as the need is identified, and seems to be preventing some kids from waiting till the level rises so much that it's a referral to special education. So we want to continue to refine and strengthen that system. In addition, in our classrooms, we have integrated co-teaching model and we have the consultant teacher model. And this is the time when our students have direct interaction with our special educators. It is when they are providing their specialized instruction. So we want to make sure that our students have the maximum time with a special educator that they need to access the curriculum, and we want to make sure that those teachers are equipped with the skills that they need to do so. And Karen spoke a little bit about our work with behavior intervention support, but we want to make sure that our teachers and our teaching assistants are supported with an expert in behavioral intervention. And so we will be contracting with a behaviorist to work directly with students who are experiencing challenging behaviors, and to also support the teacher and the TA so that the student is able to access the curriculum in meaningful ways.
In terms of the professional development, the DBT initiative was over a 2-year period, and this first year was really about them getting the basics of the work that they're going to be doing. And now the next phase goes into them working at the building level, doing case studies, and doing direct work with kids that's overseen by the DBT group. So over the next year, they're going to be doing the work with this. The group is called CBC. It's led by Dr. Alec Miller, and he'll be leading that with our clinicians and our staff in the buildings. As well, we're continuing to train our staff with the Wilson reading certification, and we'll continue with that. We're continuing to provide professional development around the co-teaching. Jamie and I have been meeting with staff at Bell and Seven Bridges and asked for feedback on how it's going this year, and they would like to continue that work because they think it's been really valuable. And finally, the Q Global is an online administration and scoring of our standardized assessments. It allows the assessments to be delivered a little bit more efficiently, and it increases inter-rater reliability. So we have purchased the online programming, and we have the iPads that we're going to disseminate to the staff who's going to be doing the testing. It'll be primarily psychologists and special education teachers, probably the speech and language pathologists, and they will get training for that in the spring. And then they'll roll out that initiative where they start doing the online training with the kids, probably in September. And the DBT is just an ongoing priority for us.
And now we're moving on to the financial aspect of our presentation. This slide are a graph and a chart that basically illustrate the same information. So there are 3 components to the special education budget: tuition, other expenses, and salaries. So the salaries are our special education teachers, related service providers, and others who impact and work with our students every day. Tuitions, that's how we pay for out of district placement. So students that are receiving their program outside of our school district, we pay tuition for that, and that is reflected here. And then the last component is other expenses. And on the next slide, we'll go through, it itemizes each of the line items within that other expenses category. But what I would like to draw attention to here is that there is a slight increase in the special education budget for next school year, an increase of 1.6%. And then on this last slide, these are the other expenses. And so they are line items like equipment and postage, office equipment, travel to conferences, things of that nature. And like when we're crafting any budget, when the year is just about halfway through, we're looking at where we spent and where we didn't spend, and are there places where we might be able to make some reductions. So we were able to make some reductions in this other expenses category. Most of them are in the area of things like postage or office equipment or office supplies, but we tried really hard to make sure that we didn't impact any of the items that apply to students or that would impact students. So overall, there is a slight increase in our budget, even though there is a small decrease in this particular component.
So we have two main funding sources and one supplemental funding source for special education. The 611 and 619 grants are something that we apply for annually. The state gives us the maximum amount that we can apply for, and we apply for the grant, and typically we get the full grant. 611 is for students ages 5 to 21, and the 619 grant is for students ages 3 to 5. And then last year, there was something called the ARP, the American Rescue Plan, and that was a supplemental grant, but it was a one-year grant. So we don't get that again this year, but you can see that our budget award has gone up incrementally every year. The state aid is based on a formula that the state uses for reimbursement for students that are known as high-cost students or excess cost students. So based on the formula, they also provide reimbursement for our students. And then the third is one that we work on, which is Medicaid reimbursement. It's only for students who are eligible for Medicaid reimbursement, and there's a process that we need to go through. There's a lot of documentation that we need to keep in order to be compliant and get funding back. But we work really diligently. We use Civic Solutions for our Medicaid reimbursement, and we've switched now to Questar BOCES, who's helping us with the STAC or the excess cost reimbursement. And that has been really helpful. We have found them to be very responsive and really helping to educate us and how we can maximize any of the reimbursement that we can get from the state for both direct services and related services. And this last slide is always confusing to me, but it's just based, it's about the state formula and how the state makes a determination about what our reimbursement is. And it's essentially based on an average cost of a student. They have a threshold that Chappaqua has to reach a certain threshold. And then any of our students whose costs exceed that threshold, we get a percentage of that excess cost back. How'd I do with that one, Josh? Pretty good, thanks. Yeah.
So at this time, are there any questions for Jamie and Karen? Thank you for your thorough presentation. Very much appreciated.
I just have one. So just to be clear, the added expenses, the other expenses, that coming down, obviously the slight uptick that you're showing in your overall budget, we're actually spending more as on our students as those numbers escalate. I'm just clarifying that, right?
Yes, the
Yeah.
increase is in salaries because we are
Right.
adding a special education teacher to Bell's.
Right. So the actual increase in what we're spending on the students is actually
direct
right.
to students.
Okay.
Yes.
And I don't know if you have the answer to this, but I would be curious. It's not really important to the budget, but the OHI number, is there a way to parse that out per like grade level, like and sort of like itemize it by cohort? I would just sort of be interested to see.
We
those
could
yeah.
parse it out by grade level.
Okay.
Yeah, if that's
Great.
information that you would like, we could absolutely do that
Great.
because that OHI is a category that is on their IEP. So it's a disability category. So we could easily look at students who have that classification
Mhm.
and make a graph or a chart for you by grade.
Great.
We'll have that ready at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right. Thank you very much. And now I'd like to invite up Jamie Block, who will present the athletic program. Let me get the clicker right there.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. So I'm going to speak about the overview of the athletic program for next year. First, one of the things that we really try to stress to all of our athletes and coaches that we are the ambassadors of the district. These are the students and coaches who go out into the communities throughout the state representing Chapco wherever they are, and that's something we take very important here. And one of our goals is always to embody empathy, gratitude, and humility. This is a quick overview of who we are as a district in physical education, health, and athletics between our physical education classes at our 3 elementaries, 2 middle schools, and our high school, and then a breakdown of our programs and teams that we offer in the athletics and our coaches, as well as our athletic trainers and strength coach. Our participation numbers are very strong and healthy. In the fall, we had 782 student athletes, winter 529, and the spring is just an estimate about where we are now. We start middle school sports on Monday, so that number can continue to grow. This is something that we're really excited about because we want student engagement in all of our different activities. We offer a wide variety of activities for them to participate in. We see the gymnasiums and the fields and health class just as the largest classrooms in our district. It's very important that we're teaching our children to be physically literate and their experiences and engagement and socially and emotionally in all of those active spaces. We do a number of different activities from kindergarten up, and then at the high school we have an elective program that was restarted this year, which is really exciting because it's a lot of autonomy and student choice, which provides for a lot more engagement with our students. So why are we participating in this? Well, I always start off with fun. It's just a lot of fun. That should always be something that we want our kids to be participating in: team building and personal development, fitness, competition, tradition. We're just an extension of the classroom wherever we go. So the year has been a tremendous one. The fall was very exciting. We had 4 teams actually in the section finals. We had 1 champion, but all our teams are highly competitive. This past winter was kind of mirrored that the fall, except as you know, last week we crowned 7 state championships, which is pretty incredible. Just some more things on our athletic program and things we value: community spirit, student involvement, teaching children to be self-advocates and how they represent everyone. Character really is our hidden curriculum in athletics. We're representing this school and the community wherever we go, and that's where a lot of lessons are learned in these activities and these spaces that necessarily aren't always done in the classroom. So the numbers. Running down our numbers, we have some slight increases in some areas and some larger ones in some others. You'll see some of the biggest jumps. I'll focus on contractual or things that we don't have a lot of control over. They're vendors that we deal with. Ice hockey program, we've been a little under budgeted in that with our ice hockey program for practices and ice time. We play at the Brewster Ice Rink. You'll also see in facility rental or more things such as our tennis team, the pool rentals that we go to, golf when we play outside for practices. Awards, the percentage isn't quite right, but that number might be a little large. We may have to actually build another wall in the gym just to host our banners after this winter. So that number may grow the percentage may really mean that soon. And then one of our BOCES athletics that's section 1. Those are the dues that pays our officials, the section 1, all of our sports, that's all contractual. And then our largest increase then is also in transportation. We're transporting a lot more than I think in the past. I think what happened coming out of COVID, a lot of our middle schools were being transported by families, but that's something they really need now with everybody going back to work. So we're transporting our middle school students up to here to practice and play, as well as going over to the other schools because we have some mergers, and the price of transportation has grown. I want to quickly mention the sports boosters. It's kind of the team behind the teams. They don't only support us in spirit and all those other ways, but they also help us financially. They work with all the teams through a variety of different ways, as well as sponsoring senior days, homecoming, and other things. But they also have a training and development grant. And in the past, they've provided pitching machines. They've done 2-day choreographies with UCS cheerleading camps. Dr. Dish, it's a shot machine for practicing and shooting. The Air Cat is a special unique machine used for volleyball, and boys lacrosse utilize a game video huddle upload, which helped to break down film. And that's what it's all about.
Are there any questions for Jamie based on what he presented?
I have one.
Sure.
Thank you, Jamie. On the money slide, where you talked about one of the lines that you said went up was contractual, but it seemed like a lot of the things that I think of as contracts were broken out, right? Like so the rink rental, the pool rental, all the spaces we don't have that we rent, and the busing. So can you just give a little bit of a feel for what other remains in that contractual line that we
Yeah,
contract for?
They're kind of a little unique in those athletic services and contractual. Anything for us that ball net system that we put up outside, our ice machines being fixed, our Neptune contract for music, our Gipper that we use for social media. There's a number of different things in there that we're contracted with. Right now, we have a company that comes in and helps to maintain our fitness center. They do an assessment of it, maintain it, and then fix it. Same thing with our bleachers and other types of equipment outside. If something was being fixed, that would fall under our equipment repair line.
Thank you very much, Jamie.
Thank you very much.
Very straightforward. Now Josh and I are gonna do some follow-up from the last meeting. So we're just gonna reset here. Andrew, you're gonna come back up. Okay, so that's the end of our component presentations for this evening. So if there's any questions after the presentation tonight that you'd like us to address at the following meeting, just like we're going to do right now, just let us know and we'll prepare those slides, okay? All right, so after the last board meeting, we had a couple questions, some suggestions, and some further clarity. So Josh and I are going to provide that for you right now. So just so everyone understands, we're recommending a budget right now at this point with the assumption that we're going to receive all of our state aid back. We might even receive a little bit more based on what we're seeing right now, but nothing's over until it's adopted and finalized. But we are recommending a proposed increase of about $4 million at 2.94%, which is going to push us over our levy limit because our levy limit is low this year. It's 1.6%. And so in our recommended budget, we have included 3 new police officers, 3 additional elementary teachers, and this is based on feedback that we have received over multiple years here around concerns that our community has expressed to us. And so we have prioritized this in the budget, and we've also increased our use of fund balance to offset the budget, and that has been something that we have been focused on for a number of years as well. So our override levy increase is about 2.5 million. So that's what we are presenting, and that's how this budget has been constructed. At the last meeting, we had shared with you what a levy limit budget would look like, and that would include everything that we currently have in place with the flexibility to make some adjustments if we need to in terms of our programs and instruction. But it does not address the elementary class size concerns or the SRO concerns that have continued to be brought to our attention, or our internal concerns about the use of our fund balance to offset the budget. So we haven't recommended that as an option, and that is something that we talked about in January, and we plan forward based on that consensus here as a group. And then, so at the last meeting, there was the question, is there a different levy limit option that we could consider moving forward? And I had shared with the board that I could share something with you, but that wouldn't include the use of, or that wouldn't include the addition of 3 police officers, because I'm not comfortable cutting the instructional program at the expense of adding additional police officers. So in talking with the team, we had talked about, is there a way we could reduce staff that weren't returning through attrition or through reassignment to get to a place where we'd have those 3 additional elementary teachers. And so the way that we thought about doing that, if we had to, and we're not recommending we do this, is that we could, because Alyssa's moving into the principalship at West Orchard, we could eliminate that position, but I want to show you what that position does because we would be concerned about that. And then we could conceivably not run electives at the high school that aren't required in art and in social studies. But if we did this, we would still be allocating $3.5 million to the budget to get us under the cap, which again, I don't recommend. And so the cost of this would be like looking at these courses that are taught by a social studies teacher and an art teacher that aren't required and making some decisions based on enrollment. And then, again, I'm not recommending this. And then the work that Alyssa has and this person has done over the course of their over the course of this role here, since we expanded it to elementary education, would have to be reallocated. And so we've made some intentional decisions to expand this role to address some real needs that we've had across the district, not only in the elementary schools, but in the middle school. So if we were to not fill this position moving forward, I would view that as a step backwards from the progress that we've made to aligning the curriculum and to addressing some of the real transition concerns that we've had between 4th and 5th grade. So it's just something that I just want to put out there for you to be thinking about. And so the other thing is that we did an analysis of our tax levy history. So Josh, I'd like you to talk a little bit about that.
So I went back to 1996 to look at our tax levy increases. You could see the orange line of when the tax cap started. And pre-tax cap, right, you could see that from 2007 on back, all of our budget to budget increases were all over, except for one, were over 4%. So you could see what this graph looks like. You could obviously see as the tax cap started a couple years before that, we had lower levy limit increases. That's also the time we started increasing our use of fund balance at time which started depleting those funds that we had. So here you could see that graph pretty clearly. The blue on the table is pre-tax cap, and then the rest is the post-tax cap.
So then it was asked that we talk a little bit about things that we had discussed as an administrative team that didn't make the budget cut, right? So like these are conversations that we've had of things that we feel like we need to talk about when we are budgeting, but we don't prioritize them because there are other things that we feel like need to be prioritized. And so some of those things would include, and as you know, in our strategic plan, we were looking towards adding foreign language at the elementary school. We did not prioritize that in this year's budget, but that is a 5-year process. So that's something we're thinking about. We've also been using TSP at the high school to support the middle schools. We've been talking about, should we have a program in place to support our students at the middle schools, just like at the high school moving forward. We had to reduce one of our art teachers at the elementary school. We didn't restore that position. We talk about that every year because that's, although we're meeting the art credit requirements, there's a difference between shared teachers and having a teacher dedicated to the building and how they're able to support the work. We've always talked about, could we add another custodian at Greeley? We're adding more spaces, but we haven't been adding more staff. So those are just some examples of conversations that we have around budgeting that are important, but in the end, they don't meet our priorities. Another thing we always talk, can we expand modified sports? Of course, we haven't done that this year in our budget, as Jamie just presented, but we talk about these things, but we have to make some decisions based on limitations. So just to kind of give you an idea of what those conversations sounded like. And so at this point now, I think this is a good model. If there's questions, more information that you feel like you want us to expand on, we could take that. We can answer questions. We can gather additional information. And at the end of the next week's presentation, we can do the same thing and we can present additional information to help guide the budget process. So we could take that, we can open it up at this time. If there's any questions or further conversation.
I can jump in and start, I guess. And I appreciate that you guys responded to the questions and concerns that were raised by the board. But I want to say that for me personally, I'm not comfortable approving a budget that's eliminating existing teaching positions. That, especially, I think that one of the most impressive things about Greeley is the breadth of courses that we offer. and the opportunities that affords our kids to not only take classes that they're interested in, but to have a varied schedule and not only be taking, what we call the core requirements. So I don't like that idea, just speaking bluntly. And whereas I feel like I would like to continue to see the original budget proposal with the additional elementary school classroom teachers and the additional allocation towards the SRO. I don't want to see that come at the expense of existing teacher or the elementary school education director. And that position, just historically, for people who may not have come to those meetings, were that our parents had raised a lot of concerns that across the elementary schools there were inconsistencies, and especially sort of looking towards entering middle school. And part of why that position was expanded was to address that. And I think that that's happened. And so I wouldn't want to see that necessarily slip away. And I know there were some concerns raised that when we disseminated that safety survey, that maybe it didn't fully capture the views of the community as a whole. So I just want to reiterate that that safety survey was not only emailed to literally every member of the community, not just the school community, but the CCSD community, but also was sent to people in writing on the budget newsletter document that flyer, what is that called? The newsletter that goes out prior to the budget, and we had kiosks set up at the budget vote last year for people to actually respond to the survey. So that, I mean, obviously we can't make people respond to the survey, but every taxpayer in our district was sent that survey by both email and in print. So everybody absolutely had an opportunity to participate in it. Speaking only personally, I feel like we need to keep the SROs in the budget and give the community the opportunity to vote on that, recognizing that it would be a non-levy compliant budget, recognizing that there's going to be opposition to that. But I feel like there was so much outcry, and there has been so much outcry in the wake of every gun violence incident in this country. And I personally agree with that outcry, but also I don't feel like I can say, unfortunately, with any position of confidence that it's going to stop the gun violence. And so I feel like we, as a board, our first responsibility is to ensure the safety of our students and our faculty and our staff. And again, I personally just want to feel that, God forbid, something ever happens, we've done everything in our power to prevent something from happening. But I think that otherwise we're going to continually find ourselves in this position, right? Anytime there's an incident anywhere in the country, there's going to be the rallying cry to add the SROs, and I think that it makes sense to add them to the budget, present the budget as originally presented to us. It's very clear from these presentations, and I know there will be more, that everybody is looking for savings wherever they can potentially find them, and we appreciate that. But that, speaking only personally for myself, that's where I come out.
Did someone have a question about the star relief that you wanted? Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Well, can I just say something? So I'm dedicated to the success of all students. I'm also committed to the teachers and the staff developers and the entire team here at CCSD. My only point that I would like to make again is that I do not believe the budget should be presented in a way that it's so binary. SROs are important. Safety is priority. Small class sizes, it's wonderful. I know last board meeting, Christine, you asked me, what do you want me to cut? And I'm not asking you to cut anything necessarily. I don't think that's my job as a board member to say, this is what I want and this is what I don't want. I'm definitely not asking you to cut teachers. You said that. I'm all for good education. Like many families that move here, I moved here with my husband and 3 boys 11 years ago for the teachers of Chappaqua. I am a teacher. However, we have a fiduciary responsibility here. And I'm asking to be thoughtful and creative and not make it so binary that people are left with no options. My theme here is to have options, real options, authentic options, whether it's about math and science programs, whether it's about thinking deeply about what makes sense for our district and how we're going to spend our money and where we're going to spend our money. If we need to tighten our belts, where will we do that? That's all.
I guess my question then is, though, I'm not sure I'm clear on what you're looking for, because the superintendent presents the budget to us, and then we either approve it or we don't approve it. But I guess
I'm also sharing a personal statement because you said that you personally do not want to see teachers cut, and I'd like to add that I do not either, and I've never asked that. But I do think it's not fair to put our community at a place where our options are so binary that it's SRO and small class sizes, pay for it or forget about it. I'm not comfortable with that. And speaking of class sizes, if we were to really look at what was presented in last week's presentation, and I know we don't have this up, but if you look at slide number 38, we have a decrease in enrollment, but an increase in sections, yet we have to add 5 sections. It's very unfortunate that we are projecting a decrease in enrollment in the 3 elementary schools, yet we are projecting an increase in sections. I'm just not sure how that works. Slide number 36. There's a 3-year average of surviving rate. Can you show us the last 4 years of enrollment by school, by grade? Does it have a pattern? I'd like to understand that better. Slide 44, aligned to elementary class size guidelines. So are we artificially lowering the class size? Are we not aligning, would be my question. Because in the contingency budget, if the budget fails, it's pointing to the fact that we are not aligning by this proposed budget. Because our goal is to then go back to actually aligning to what we already have. But that's not something you have to answer right now. But if you can prepare those answers for next week, since we'll be back next week, that'd be great. Thank you.
Sure.
I mean, for me, the alternative you presented is a non-starter. I'll focus on another reason for it. Is that to me, we have to place a priority on the fund balance element And I don't see a path to do that and staying under the levy limit. So that's why I would say we got to go back to the original as framed that we all asked for to begin with, and focus on explaining why that's so important and how that's going to set us up for the future. So that I don't have a question. That's my point of view.
Thank you.
I don't have a question either. But I think even though Ryan and I maybe disagree with the why, I would say that the new proposal is also a non-starter for me. So
I also don't love the new proposal as well. And I did have the question about the STAR deduction rebate, and I know people are concerned about if we go over the limit, then that affects that, and if you could talk to that.
Sure. So there was a STAR tax rebate in 17, 18, and 18, 19, where homeowners received a check back that was above their STAR rebate from the state government. That was tied to the tax cap that ended in 2019. The Governor Hochul reproposed that rebate. It went into the legislature, it didn't pass, and her proposal did not have the tax cap provision within that as well. So it doesn't have anything to do with the STAR refund that people receive now off of their taxes. It was a separate rebate that was on top of the STAR that folks that qualified received.
Thanks.
Okay, so our next meeting, we'll prepare the OHI numbers, and we'll talk a little bit more about sectioning at the elementary school and how we got there, and some of what we've been thinking about in terms of how to support and prioritize small class sizes and how that all works based on Kaylee's request. And then if there's, and we'll rewatch the meeting, but if there's more that you want us to present or you want us to go a little bit further about an additional area of the budget, just let us know. Send us an email and we'll prepare the information for you. I do want to share presenting next week. And then on the 25th, we'll have an opportunity to have a Zoom with families if they have questions that they want to ask us. The benefit of the Zoom is it's recorded, so everyone has the same information. Plus, I did a ton of meetings around the bond, and we didn't really have many people come at all. The things that were attended with by most of our community were the Zoom meetings. So that's why I'm moving forward in this direction. Plus, I also think when you have a budget that is being presented differently than budgets in the past, there's a significant benefit in recording it, so everyone has the same information and pushing it out to the community at the same time. And so on the 27th, I just want to forecast out that meeting might be canceled because we might not be ready because we have to wait for the state budget and rescheduled for after our break. But hopefully it won't have to be, but I don't anticipate that we'll be able to have that meeting. I'm just sharing with you right now. And so then you could see the rest of the budget calendar with the understanding that there's going to be a meeting somewhere in there where I'll be presenting a budget to you for adoption. And again, if you have any comments or questions, I know Josh has been talking to community members who've been calling him specifically with questions about fund balance. People are absolutely encouraged to do that. We also encourage you to send emails to the Board of Education and to Josh and I so we can hear your thinking. And some of that information informs how we present at the next meeting. So we totally encourage our community to do that. We appreciate it. So thank you very much. And that's the end of the superintendent's report. I want to thank my colleagues. There's a lot of information that was presented tonight, and Andrew and Karen and Jamie for being here and for presenting their budget so thoroughly. So thank you.
Okay. I appreciate everybody sitting here and listening. We know this is a big decision that we're still working on our end and that the community will need to make come May. So we appreciate the attendance and really listening to these presentations. That brings us tonight to committee reports. I know we were all just here last week, but did anybody?
I don't think so.
Nope. Well, that was quick. That brings us to the public comment period. We welcome public comments, and in respect for each other's time, we ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. Board members may also be contacted via email or phone. After the public comment period has been completed, Board members may have a discussion amongst themselves regarding comments presented, and I also just remind you, please, that no personally identifiable information may be used in public comment.
Hi, I'm Cassiopeia Sant. I'm a senior here at Greeley. Ackerman Board of Ed, I'll make this quick. 2 months ago, a pair of students came here to speak about Buttonhook Forest. Specifically, they told the Board of Education that it was only right to allow Indigenous peoples to use the forest for cultural purposes. As of now, no action has been taken towards achieving this. The section of the forest owned by the school, which is about 90%, remains fenced off and closed off to anyone and everyone. Do I really need to reiterate what has already been said to explain why the district has a moral obligation to open the land for Indigenous cultural ceremony? This district's handling of Buttonhook from 2010 onwards has been completely corrupt, profiteering, and geared towards destruction. Buttonhook Forest, on top of being an environmental sanctuary and crucial watershed, is an Indigenous sacred ground with centuries-old stone structures and possibly human remains. Between 2010 and 2023, the district tried to destroy it to build 6 mansions on it and then sell them for a profit. Then came the lawsuit in 2023, and I know that since then you haven't been able to sell the land or state who you want to sell it to until after the lawsuit is done. Obviously, a great injustice has been done to the Indigenous community, committed by you and your attempt to play real estate with this sacred land. This was voiced by members of the Brothertown Indian Nation in 2022. The Brothertown Indian Nation are the descendants of Indigenous people from this area. They live in Wisconsin because they were forced west in a death march when Westchester was colonized. In 2022, members of the Brothertown Indian Nation flew in all the way from Wisconsin to speak to you, the board in Ackerman, about the significance of this land to them. Their statements fell on deaf ears. Today, in 2024, Noam Katchit Schilling, an elder of Brothertown, has said, quote, "It would be good if the school district would not prevent Indigenous people from entering that land for ceremony. They may be reluctant because they might fear we will observe further evidence of our past ceremonial use of the land. I hope we will be blessed with the freedom to bring people onto that land for healing, acknowledgement, and community wellness. I have nothing more to say tonight. Stop being colonizers. Get your act together. It's time to right your wrongs. Let Indigenous people use the land."
Hi, I'm Millie Schwartz. I'm a sophomore here at Horace Greeley High School. And I wanted to say, just circling back to what Cass said, that the school's ownership and attempted sale of Buttonhook Forest in order to create profit for the school district carries on Chappaqua legacy of imperialism and colonialism. And I just want to make it clear that this town is trying to profit off of the genocide of Native Americans, and it is opportunistic and it is exploitative and plain wrong. CCSD, as Cass said, has no moral claim to this land. And also, I'd like to acknowledge that you have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to work out and sell this Buttonhook property. This is taking resources and taxpayer money away from students. This is a gross misuse of finance and public government funds. Also, according to environmental experts at Safe Buttonhook, and I quote, "If the subdivision is approved, 676 trees would be clear-cut and bedrock blasted, leading to habitat loss, soil erosion, noise, air, and water pollution," end quote. These are the modern effects of the cruel imperialist apparatus that still lingers in Chappaqua, and it's a gross reminder of our colonial and imperialist history, but I think it can also serve as a reminder for history to not repeat itself. We have the chance to right a wrong. We have the chance to try to make justice. Now more than ever, the Indigenous community and their sovereignty must be respected and honored, as emphasized by the death of Nex Benedict, a transgender teen in Oklahoma of Choctaw descent. They were brutally assaulted in February in their school bathroom, which directly led to their death. The school preaches inclusivity and must extend said inclusivity and respect to the indigenous community of Westchester. That is all.
Hello, nice to meet you again. My name is Wainoy. I have two kids in school here in Greeley, and I would like to talk a little bit about some of the curriculum that they had. Recently, they finished the world religion unit, and they learned about Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, and Sintu. And it is very nice and very good that we expose them to these religions. However, when asked what do you have to do in the end, I've been told that they have to do a CRQ on Islam, and there was no choice to choose whatever religion you had to do. So we asked a little bit, what did they learn? Because it's important to us to understand, if they're getting truths, if they're getting facts. And what we learned about is that although they mentioned true facts about how Islam was important to maintain knowledge and started modern medicine and started mathematics and other field like astronomy during the Middle Ages in Europe and maintain the knowledge that was acquired in the past. They also been told that Islam is not a violent religion, and they never use violence to make more people believe in Islam, which is not true because first it's written in the Quran itself that they basically killed the people of Medina because they didn't want to become Muslims. But also it relates to today, to our days, that they didn't learn that Islam has things like, they, sorry about that, like when you prepare like that, I'm not doing it well, about the religious war and about jihad that relate to their lives these days in the United States. So for me, I'm trying to understand if the teachers teach them facts or teach them their thoughts, what they think about how, about the subject. For me personally and my wife, both our parents came from Yemen, grandparents, sorry, came from Yemen. They were forced to leave Yemen either because they would be killed or they have to become Muslims. So how I explain that to my kids, that our personal history and what they learned in school by the teacher that they appreciate and believe saying the truth. So I really would like that when you're teaching a subject, teach the facts, the good and the bad. There's beautiful things in the Islam, there are also bad things in Islam. There's no beautiful things in Judaism, there are also bad things in Judaism. It's all the religions. Stick to the fact, teach everything, even if it's not always comfortable to hear. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Eli Benson. I'd like to thank the superintendent and the board for putting together some of the committees. I thought that was very helpful. I attended the AJC committee. And I also met with, so I have a daughter who goes to Roaring Brook and then a young boy who will be in Roaring Brook in about a year. After meeting with the principal, initially I thought that teaching children in elementary school about the Holocaust, it was too early. But I thought a lot more about that and had a lot of discussions. And my conclusion is that given the rising anti-Semitism in the United States and how fast propaganda with cell phones and how fast kids are getting information, by high school it's already too late, frankly speaking. And by middle school it's too late. So, I'm here to basically put forward the idea that this is actually start to be taught in the elementary schools. So the AJC gave me a group of materials, which I forwarded to Tanya Wilson, and I hope to have a conversation. And I think it should be in all the elementary schools, because the biggest problem that the Jewish people, and it's not just a concern for Jewish people, but this is the worst time in the history of the Jewish people in the United States of America, is It's got to be about the facts, and we have to educate kids when they're very young. So this is what I wanted to, say. I think it's very important that all the elementary schools start to look at this. It's information from, that's initiated by the board and the superintendent, and that's it. Thank you.
I have some comments. Is that all right?
You go first because you're probably
Okay.
going to say what I was going to say.
So I just wanted to share.
Wait,
I'm sorry.
Hi, I'm Barrett Flom. I have a child in the district. I'm here again to implore the board not to approve an overtax cap budget. As it currently stands, the budget's focused on making people feel better without actually doing the hard work of preparing a fiscally responsible budget. Sitting through these meetings has been difficult because only Kaylee has raised hard questions when there's a lot of things that can be asked. I understand when Hillary says things like we want to ensure our safety of our students and that that's a top priority. However, who says that SROs actually ensure our students' safety? Have you looked at the security audits that were done? Has anyone asked, have we finished doing all the things on the security audits? Maybe our money could be better spent doing that. Or there was the special education presentation tonight. No one asked where we are with the special education audit that occurred. Have we completed that? Because there were several items that haven't been done, to my knowledge, that were not even discussed in the priorities. But none of these questions are being even asked. Like, this is your job. I know you can't advocate either way, but you should be at least asking questions. And you're not doing that, and it's really disappointing. Thank you.
Okay, is that all right? So I wanted to go back to Eli's comments and share that we had a work session with AJC to discuss some of the feedback that they wanted to provide to the Board of Education and the administrative team regarding those focus groups, and they're in the process of preparing a written report. And so when that's ready, we'll put that online and share that with the community so they can see, because we didn't have any attendance at the meeting, and we don't tape our work sessions. So I just wanted to share an update with that. And just some considerations around concerns that our parents may have about our curriculum. So the first is, at our last meeting, we adopted a policy on how to raise concerns, which begins with the teacher. So I would encourage our parents that if they want to talk about some of the experiences that their kids are having in our classrooms, that's a great place to start. And if they feel like that's not the right place for them, the building level team will certainly help. And then we have Adam, who's available to talk through with parents their concerns. And then just in terms of like where we teach things and when we do that, and I do understand and appreciate the desire to move things down. And so that's always something that we can look at. And that's one of the reasons why we have the DET in place, because we have our faculty who can really grapple with those decisions, because we do have standards that we follow from the New York State that really help us understand when it's appropriate to introduce certain topics to kids. And in terms of the Holocaust, that is really a middle school concept, but we do begin in 4th grade. But I hear like the level of concern and whether or not there's ways to appropriately do that at a younger level. So those are good conversations to have at the DET and to have with the building level team. So I appreciate that the parent who had shared that's his starting point, because that's where it should be. But I will go back to the DET and talk a little bit about that, because I do know that the AJC, part of what we'll do with that report is we'll process that out together as well. So I just wanted to share that as
I want to share one other thing for parents or community members who may have noticed that the students who have now left have been speaking at a number of meetings. I do want to let the community know that Dr. Ackerman and I met with several students, including one of the speakers this evening, and their parents for a while back in, what was that, January? Yes. January, and explained to the students at that time exactly what the limitations are, because we are currently being sued over the Button Hook property, and there are a lot of limitations about what we can and cannot do while that lawsuit is ongoing. So the students are very aware of this. Dr. Ackerman actually told the students at that point that if there is a change in the standing of this lawsuit, she will reach out to them directly and update them. So I just want the community to know that we are absolutely responding to the concerns of the students. We met with the students, we spoke with the students. I'm not sure, you know, where things stand in terms of their feelings on that, but I really, it's very important to all of us up here that we are responsive to the students who reach out to us about concerns, and so I wanted to let the community know that we have absolutely met with them.
I just want to say one thing. To the last speaker, this is actually not my job. This is none of our jobs. We were elected officials, and we sit up here, and the implication that you're making that we're not taking this seriously enough for you, I sort of reject that. We take a lot of responsibility, and we put a lot of time and effort into sitting in this position, and we, if we're not asking the questions that you would like to ask, then you should run again and try to win, because this is not a job that I get paid for unless there's a stipend at the end of the day. I take a lot of time away from my family and from my actual professional job to sit up here and do a job for my community that I feel is very important. But don't come up here and tell us that we're not doing the job just because it's not the way that you want it done.
We have been up here a long time. Does anybody need a 5-minute recess?
I think we can get through this quickly.
Okay. No, I just didn't know if anybody needed a bathroom break.
All right, I present 4.1 instructional as presented.
I will move that we accept the superintendent's recommendations under 4.1. Any questions, concerns? All in favor?
I recommend 4.2 non-instructional as presented.
I'll move that we accept 4.2 as presented.
Questions or concerns? All in favor? Okay, that brings us to the consent agenda. What?
I think she just needed to hear you.
That brings us to the consent agenda. The use of a consent agenda permits the Board of Education to make more effective use of its time by adopting a single motion to cover those relatively routine matters which are included. Any member of the board who wishes to discuss individually a particular piece of business on the consent agenda may so indicate, and that item will be considered and voted on separately, thus preserving the right of all board members to be heard on any issue. So as a preliminary matter, is there anything anybody wants to remove from the consent agenda tonight? No? Okay. The only thing probably worth, two things we probably should note. The first is that Thomas Marabella will be we'll vote on him in a moment to be put in as the permanent school resource officer at the elementary level. And to congratulate the COSA and the administration on effectively reaching a deal. That is great. So I will move 5.1 through 5.7. Can I have a second? Any questions, thoughts, concerns? All in favor? That brings us to 6s, which is acknowledging contracts previously approved by the superintendent as per board policy 6085. So we can take these together, 6.1 through 6.5. Can I have a motion, please, for 6.1 through 6.5?
About that?
Sure.
Is there, I know in some of the contracts there's sort of a maximum amount of days. Is there a number of days that we're planned to use these consultants?
These are all third-party evaluators for the tryout process.
Mhm.
So I think probably at the end of this week they'll all be done, if not today. They're the remember the board policy?
Yes, no,
Yeah.
I understand what it is, but I just wanted to know how many days the tryouts are, because I wasn't sure if we're doing them for a week or if it's for, I know there was a length of period, but I just wanted to understand if it was like 5 days versus 10 days?
Yeah, so it's my understanding through talking to Jamie that if the tryout period didn't wrap up today for everyone, it would be done by Friday, but I can send you an email and let you know.
Okay, thank you.
So can I have a motion, please, for 6.1 through 6.5?
I'll move.
I'll second. Any questions, concerns? All in favor? Nothing under 7. 8.1 is acknowledging receipt of the claims auditor report for February 2024. I will move 8.1. Can I have a second? Questions, concerns? All in favor? All right, that brings us to notice of future meetings. As Dr. Ackerman said in her presentation, next Wednesday, March 20th, we will be back somewhere in this building. Stay tuned because the Adams family opens the next night, so we need to see if we're here or if we're going to be in their way. But we will be somewhere in this building next Wednesday, March 20th at 7, and that's the presentation of the operations and maintenance budgets, non-instructional revenue, tax rates, and contingency budgets. And then the week after the 27th, again, as Dr. Ackerman said, is a little bit TBD depending on Albany, but we will keep the community informed. Can I have a motion, please, to adjourn at 9:42 p.m.? All in favor? We are adjourned.